Hello and welcome um, to Portals today, tracing the patterns of the epoch shift. My name is Peter, and I'm here today with members of the Portals of Perception team, Lisa, Kyriaki, Emmy, and Patrick, to explore an episode we've recently published on the portalsofperception.org website, the Universalis Project 13, the sevenfold epoch progression. Let me just show you that page. Oh, sorry, I lost that page. Okay. Very strange. So on the website, you can find all the chapters and much more, and of course on our YouTube channel. So the Universalis Project is a huge work, and it's been going on for years on the Portals website with Aviv Shahar, Karen Haney, and Kyriaki, who is with us today. We just hope to look at some of the fundamentals of this work and discuss why it's important and interesting for these changing times we are living through now. And this sevenfold progression is based on the seven colors or seven frequencies we see in the rainbow: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. Each frequency has its own energetic nature. So we can say that it is a natural grid that we can use as a lens to look at almost any of the core domains of life. Our day from waking to sleep, the start of a project to its completion, the arc of our life, and the history and unfolding of an epoch lasting 3,500 years. So welcome to all. Good to see you. And welcome to those joining us as we go live.
Thank you, Peter. And thank you, everyone, for being here. And if you're listening, you can always write your name and say hi or drop a question. We'll be very glad to share our insights on that. And we welcome you in this new experiment with the new year, where we will be discussing every second week recent content that we post in portals in an open way and conversational, and really sharing with each other our inquiries, because the aspect of inquiry, a question, is a core feature of portals of perception, where we try to be open to new ideas, new insights, and revelations. Now, specifically about this work, which is a huge, I mean, I could speak for days, but just to start us off, I would say that one main premise that kind of excites me personally in this work is that it approaches the human story or the evolution of our consciousness and unawareness, and of our awareness and of our civilization, not just through the material lens. Let's say that as humans, we evolved our technology and our tools, and thus our consciousness evolved. Or that there are geopolitical, economic, cultural machinations, and from that, different civilizations and different eras emerged. But it's more from the concept that we are part of the universe, that there is an intelligent universe that is growing and evolving, that it's a unified field that we are part of. And as it grows, we grow with it and we co-create. So there are these energetic potencies that also help us in this journey. So it's not just a journey of development from down upwards, but there's also something from, let's say, upwards downwards. So it's a kind of human response to being part and co-creating with the universe. So I find this core premise very, very important. And the idea in this way that we explore the human evolution is that these currents, which are expressed through the colors and manifest as different civilizations, ideas, values, these currents, they are not linear. They are kind of cyclic. They are appearing and appearing again, reappearing and also healing. The one heals the previous one. The one is inside the other. Inside each color, there are all the colors. So it's a very kind of organic way to view at history. And an example could be, for instance, that we see, various things reappearing in history. And then there's also, of course, the notion that now we are in a very critical point, and in this evolution, and we are maybe in a shift, in an epochal shift. So that's kind of the first things I would add to the pod. But I'm very interested to see how, if you listened to the conversation, and there's also a written article that goes with it, what impressed you, what questions you have, what insights. So I would welcome that.
Thanks for that, Kyriaki, and thanks for the warm welcome, Peter. So the first thing that jumps up in me is this idea of co-creation. How do we co-create, and what does that actually mean? So that was the first thing. And then I'm going to fast forward all the way to the end of the video recording, was this whole idea of stepping into a purposeful existence. And it seems that they're both related. So if we're co-creating towards a purposeful existence, how do we then think about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And one of the things that Kyriaki mentioned was that this has the implication of an intelligent design. When you see these patterns in nature and how, we see the rainbow and we know that they all have, every color has its own frequency and kind of speed of vibration. And so you can associate things with that. And that pattern is everywhere if you start to look. So if there's this intelligent design, what is the implication of that? Because it's things are playing out against this, and we can see it, and that perhaps means we can anticipate what's going to happen or understand what we look at, in a way that we, give us an insight into what we're actually experiencing today that we wouldn't normally have without understanding the pattern. So it's really a useful tool to decode what we're experiencing and what we see around us, what we see other people experience. So I think it's a fascinating, really a tool that we can use to observe life around us and in us.
Yeah, maybe one could say an example or something that where we can see, let's say, the sevenfold blueprint or a part of it. Patrick is okay. Would you? have some intelligence to add?
Oh, now you're putting a lot of pressure on me to be intelligent. Well, there are a couple things I would say. You know, people always ask me when we start talking about the epoch, they don't really have a good handle on what an epoch is. And so I try to start very simply in explaining, you know, what we mean, and then how that can be a really practical way to understand. We can look around today and we see a lot of things changing. The environment's changing. We have a lot of concerns about global warming. There seems to be a lot of political instability. And if you look at it through a different lens, you could almost say you would expect to see this kind of behavior. So what really does that mean? And so when we talk about an epoch, we're really talking about the flow of human history on this planet. And if you go way back to the caveman to current time, that's a huge amount of time. We're really not talking about that with an epoch. We're looking at like the last 3,000 to 4,000 years of what's been going on. And if you look at it that way, it's easier to trace big events that happened on the planet and see how they happen in like a certain stage or a certain phase as history kind of unfolds. So you have the appearance of the Egyptian culture, and then you have the Roman civilization and how it expanded and sort of took over everything. Then you had the rise of religions came up. And at some point you had people becoming very individual and focus on, you know, the human. And we had the way human knowledge and exploration just exploded. And then people came together in cities and wanted to cooperate. And you can look at the flow of all these things that happened, and you kind of begin to recognize that each stage of this epoch has a certain nature. And that's where I think we can understand a little bit more when we look at it through the nature of the spectrum colors of like red through violet. Each one of those frequencies has a certain nature as well. And if you look at it, it's really interesting that you can kind of overlay those two and look at, say, the nature of what was happening when the Roman Empire was expanding as being really close to the frequency of, say, orange. And you can do that with every kind of step of the epoch. You can look at the nature of what was happening in the world, and it seems to correspond to the nature of a certain frequency. And that's why we match the two, because they do seem to overlap. But then it gets to the point of, okay, so what's happening today? And if you think about an epoch as like a sequence of stages, it has a beginning and it has an end. Every epoch or kind of stretch of history, it gets to a point where you can tell it's getting ready. One epoch is going to end, one sort of cycle. Looks like it's coming to a conclusion of some kind, and a new one is getting ready to start. And so we're kind of at that point where we're going from this old epoch that's been happening for the last 3,000, 4,000 years. It's beginning to come to an end, and it's starting to, certain patterns of behavior and institutions are starting to break down or starting to come together. And that kind of makes sense if you consider what would happen as one epoch ends and a new one is going to start to begin. And so we talk a lot on portals about a new epoch and new universal possibility. And I think it's all kind of tied in with that. It's a natural cycle of things. They has a beginning, has an end, and you can trace that cycle as it appears because it all has an effect on history and behavior. So if you look at it that way, you can look around to what's happening today, and it kind of makes sense that we're in a phase where maybe one big cycle is coming to an end and a new one is beginning. And so then you got to think, well, what are the possibilities of a new cycle beginning? And kind of you look, we're kind of in that in between one cycle ending, one beginning. And what are the possibilities and what does it all mean? And out there, I'll stop rambling. I hope that made sense.
Yeah,
was I intelligent or not intelligent?
I'd say so.
Okay.
Thank you. Oh, go on, Peter.
well, just this idea of one thing ending and another beginning. We know from experience that you can't bring everything with you. You know, if you're even moving from one place to another, you just can't bring everything with you to go to the new place. And the end of an epoch or the end of a project or the end of a business. So these are all things you can
We
use this
don't hear
lens.
Peter anymore, do we?
Can you hear me? Yeah, I think so.
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
So you can't carry everything forward. You can only carry the essentials, the things that you really need, that are really important, and that you want with you in the next place. And so I kind of look at what's going on in the world today as that. You know, a lot of things are breaking down, a lot of systems are getting shaken up. And we could look at that and be absolutely frightened, or we could look at it and say, okay, this is a natural way. We can't find our new way if we're going to bring this much baggage with us. So we've got to let go of all this, let it sort itself out to a point, and then focus on what's important. So you know, it can show us how to manage our way forward, which is what I love about this progression, this lens, really.
Absolutely. And also to respond to Lisa's inquiry, which is fantastic, I think to see how the human can respond to new allowances that are being released, let's say, by universal permission, and to be able to upgrade the model. Of course, as Peter said, we need to release some things, some stopping self-imposed limitations, and embrace the new, embrace the unknown. But there's not just one way to respond. I think there are as many people, there are ways to respond. And for instance, we can see in the impulse of the Renaissance that was a green, let's say, influence coming to the planet, like the spring that is green. We can see how many different responses. So there were the astrologers like Galileo and Copernicus. They were the philosophers like Erasmus and Luther that did the religious Reformation. There were the artists like Leonardo da Vinci. There were the Shakespeare that did the theater. And there were the people that did the explorations and or the alchemists. So there was a kind of explosion in that green influence where we see a very multiple response to that impulse that was coming after the Black Death and after various wars, and to really rejuvenate the human evolution. Or we can see, for instance, a similarity, and at the same time, simultaneously, we have the Ionian Enlightenment in the 7th century in Greece, which was an age of reason, exactly the same with many philosophical, scientific kind of schools in the Ionian, in the Ionia. And then at the same time, the 7th century BC, before Common Era, we have the 100 schools of thought in China with Confucianism, Taoism, legalism, and again, a kind of blue enlightenment at the same time, which was a blue impulse coming in. So, yeah, I think there are many ways, but we need to tune with our way and the way that fits a very critical, a very kind of explosive time that we are in, which is more in the indigo violet era.
Yes, that was a great run about history and how things go inside. The other side of it is what happened to me when watching this episode yesterday and today. And today I heard and saw completely different things. And my question is, why is that? Is the day different? Am I different? Can I certainly distinguish new angles that I couldn't yesterday? And the most striking experience was that it felt as if I could start my life again, which is funny because I'm heading to the last part. But I suddenly felt ready to start anew. Where does that come from? What does it say? Very intriguing. Feeling one human and at the same time feeling part of humanity, going towards an evolutionary part through epoch change.
That's amazing, Emmy. Yes, yes, to feel renewed and alive, and wonderful to think about this trace and how we got to where we are today and where we're going. And it makes me think of, which was said in the recording, to be conscious of what is going on and to really be participant or co-creator, as you said, Kyriaki. It's a whole new outlook of what we can do with our lives today as we step into the future. I do want to note that there's a Michael. It says opinions on viral, VRIL. Is that meant to be viral? I'm not sure. Do you see it in the comment box? Hi, Michael.
Yeah,
Thanks for
that's I've heard of it, but it's not germane to this conversation. But yeah, I think one of the things you're talking about in co-creating, Lisa, is this idea that when we put our consciousness on these things, it empowers them. It helps us to understand. But as they say in quantum physics, if you observe a particle, you change the particle, and I think that applies to something like this. If we begin to look at the world through this lens, this natural grid of colors and frequencies, we support it and we bring that consciousness to it. So I think that becomes a very powerful combination in terms of helping things along, because I like to think that part of the human possibility is to help the universe along. We've come here to help it. It's trying to help us. And we can do that through putting our consciousness on these natural systems that are at play.
So right there you have co-creation, the universe, the human, each supporting one another. And
Yeah.
that's definitely part of a co-creation as we step into the future.
Yeah.
Yes, and maybe as our awareness and consciousness grows and expands, maybe the universe also, grows and expands, or as we enjoy something in that joy, we don't know what else in this field that even modern scientists are discovering we are united. What else enjoys at the same time? So the idea of co-creating is, I think, key to the evolution, and it also allows for the freedom of choice and the self-selecting to be participant in this evolution. So, of course, these currents are washing us. So we are in them anyway, but it's different when we are at the edge and we are taking up the promise of
Yes.
of our times and of our life, and also distilling and savoring the best of each era. What will the historian of the historian or historian of the future would want to savor from, let's say, the Roman times or from the Egyptian times or from medieval times? What were the special things that we want to update and we want to make them shine and preserve them as well? So that is part of it as well.
There's one point I would want to hope that people understand, is that when we talk about the epoch, or we're talking about a spectrum, it's not just something happening out there outside of us in history. It'd be really easy to think that we're just opening a history book and kind of trace big events. But what we're really trying to also get at is that when we talk about evolution on this planet and how things change over time, we are linked to bigger cycles happening outside the planets in the universe. And we're part of these universal cycles that are going on. And if we look at it that way, if we look at each individual human as being part of the universe, we're part of it too. And all of these different frequencies are happening inside of us. And we can actually look in our own lives, for example. When we talk about a yellow frequency being associated with the appearance of religion in history, well, we can look at what is our own religious life like? Where does that urge come in? Where does that sort of tug to be responsive to something bigger than ourselves, where does that come from? And then when we do that, when we realize that it's not just something out there, it's happening in us, that's one of the ways that we can actually get ourselves in tune with the frequency of these bigger universal cycles, is by finding out and tracing where they show up, each in our own lives. And we can do that with any stage of the epoch. But I think that is just the point I would want to make, is don't think that this is just history with big events that happen to other people. This is happening every single day in us. And at any time, we can attune, consciously be part of these bigger universal cycles. And I think that's one of the ways to think about how we can actually learn to co-create with the universe. What is happening today is when we realize that we are part of this. It's happening inside of us as well. And the more we are conscious of that, the more we can have a choice in how we choose to live our lives.
Yeah.
Wonderful understanding, Patrick. And when you say to be responsive, it makes me think, as we do in this portals and of perception endeavor, we're always exploring, we're always asking questions, we're always wondering and trying to add things up. And maybe it's not about having all the answers, because we'll never have all the answers. Just the fact that we are seeking and we're explorers and we're researching and we're trying to be more conscious and co-create. So not to feel that we have to have it all figured out.
Yeah, that's a great point. And probably a good point to end this edition of Portals Today, looking at the Universalis Project number 13, the sevenfold epoch progression. We're thankful for you being with us today. We at Portals, we have an event coming up on Saturday, February 8th. I'll show it on the screen. It's with Aviv Shahar, and it's the soul's journey in between epochs. So that's going to be a fantastic day of discussions like this and in much greater depth with Aviv. So we hope you can join us. Just go to portalsofreception.org events and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you'll be notified whenever we have a live event like this. So thank you all for coming together today, and we hope to see you soon.
Thank you. Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Always great to be with you. Bye.
Bye.